Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We will continue with the discussion on verse number 14. Krishna is describing here the qualities necessary for a devotee. Let's read the verse number 14 again. Santushta satatam yogi yatatma dridhanishchayaha mayyarpitamano buddhihi yo mad bhaktas same priyaha. Always contented, contemplative, self-controlled, of firm conviction with his mind and intellect dedicated to me, such a devotee of mine is dear to me. So last time we discussed a little bit the first quality in this 14th verse, santoshtaha, being contentment. What contentment means. So let's take the second epithet used here, yogi. A yogi means contemplative here. As we saw, the word yoga means, it has two meanings. Yoga can mean concentration, yoga can mean joining of the devotee or the creature with the creator, joining of the finite with the infinite. And a yogi is one who is trying to live in a way which will bring about that union, the joining. So, a yogi is one who practices yoga. And yoga is primarily a spiritual discipline. So by yogi, we can also understand the term to mean a spiritual seeker. We have to be always aware of the fact that why we are practicing spiritual life. Sometimes we have this, what is sometimes called the herd complex. By herd complex is meant that when a flock of sheep are going, usually whatever the first sheep does, the others just follow what others are doing. Now, how many of the things that we do in life we do because, well, that's what everyone is doing. So suppose we say, well, why do you go to school? Well, everyone goes to school. Why are you doing this? Well, everyone does it. But I think that's not enough of an explanation for someone who wants to be a yogi, that I'm doing this because everyone is doing it. So we have to have some clarity in our own mind about why is it that I'm doing whatever I'm doing. I would think that most people in the world don't ask that question, which is why the lives of most people are very mechanical. But the life of a spiritual seeker is a life of awareness, which means repeatedly asking question to ourselves, why? Don't be afraid to ask the why question. Keep on asking the question why until you reach a point when there is no answer. Go and try to push the limit. Maybe there is no answer to it now. Maybe after 5 years you'll find it. Maybe after 10 years you'll find it. But don't be afraid to ask why. And the interesting thing is this. A lot of our thinking, a lot of our doing, a lot of our speaking, if we ask the question why, and if you don't get a satisfactory answer, it usually means I don't need to be doing this. I don't need to be saying this. I don't need to be working on this. We will be amazed to find how much of our time and energy in life is going in just useless talk, useless actions, and useless thinking. And each one of these things, thinking, speaking, doing, requires energy, requires time. And the more we are able to eliminate, it's a little bit like this. Suppose you find that your home or your room is got too crowded. At some point you have to keep on asking, all these things that I've accumulated in me, how much of these do I really need? And if you are able to say, okay, this is something that's been lying around for the last 2 years and I have not even looked at it, I have not even touched it, so I probably don't need it. So either throw it away or donate it or put it in some place you don't have to see it every day if you really don't need it. What it will do is it will create more space in your room. The more space you find in your room, the more we are able to eliminate unnecessary things from our room, you will feel better. I'm sure all of us have tried it at some point or the other. When you clean your room, at least for a few days, you feel good until all the junk accumulates again. So same is true with the mind. Just as our room and home can get overcrowded with things that we don't need, our mind can get overcrowded with ideas that we don't need, with information that we don't need. And if we are able to eliminate it, stop paying attention to it, we'll be able to kind of free up that space in our mind, in our life. And we will then find we'll have more time to do things. We'll have more energy to do things. Sometimes most of us nowadays find that our schedules are so tight, they're so crowded, so difficult to find time. And it's true. It's true that there will be a lot of engagement, a lot of schedules, a lot of things to take care of. But even then, if we are able to eliminate some of this unnecessary stuff from our lives, we will be able to make time. We will be able to find energy reserves for that. And so a yogi, therefore, is one who always asks the question why, and is able to free up that time and space in their lives. And what do you do now? What do you do with the time and space that is freed up? You must use it, use this space, use this time, use this energy towards things which are important to us. And if I see myself as a yogi, then my spiritual ideal is among the priorities in my life. And of course, we just have to sort out the priorities. Depending on where our spiritual ideal lies in our life, we can judge for ourselves how much spiritual life is important to us. Clearly, it's not necessary that, it's easy to say, God is the most important thing in my life. We might say that, but what we need is a very honest examination of our own life and say, sure, God is important to me, but my job is important to me as well. Food is important to me as well. My clothes are important to me as well. The list can vary from person to person. But what we need to find out is which are the things important to me. And in the scale of importance, how would I place them? At least roughly. And if the closer the spiritual ideal is at the top of the list, closer to it goes, I can say that I'm becoming more of a yogi than I am. That's one way of checking how much of yogi identity is becoming stronger in our own lives. Yatatma. Yatatma is self-control. So yeah, the root means control. Now, self-control is, you can see all of these qualities are interrelated. How can I free up time, energy, and space from my life? Only if I have control. In other words, the moment I discover certain things are not absolutely necessary to me, at least in the present stage of life, I must be able to then say, I'm going to keep them away. And in order for us to keep things away, we need a measure of control over ourselves. Very recently, one of the students who is in contact with me wrote to me, and I greatly appreciated his efforts. He said that he discovered that he's spending a lot of time checking his emails and spending time online. And he said he suddenly discovered that not all of it was very urgent, not all of it was very important, not all of it was even needed. So he said he's now going to try for a month to just allot some specific hours to check emails, specific hours to go online, and keep away from computers or phone. I appreciated that because here is a sincere spiritual seeker, recognizing that some things in his life are taking away more time and more energy than is absolutely essential. Now, it's not that in itself checking emails is bad or wrong, or being online is bad or wrong. Sometimes your work may expect it of you. It might be needed. It might be even important. What we need to do is find out whether the time and energy I'm employing in it is absolutely necessary for the things that I need to do in life. And this particular person found it was not that necessary. In fact, it was interfering with his practice of prayer and meditation, because he said, if I'm meditating and then if I'm thinking, I should have answered that email, or I say, or something, then he said, then that's a problem. And so he said he's going to make an effort to do it. Now, that is what is meant by self-control. We may not always succeed. We may fail in our attempts. But nothing stops us from trying to control, because we can expect success only after trying. If we don't try, it's like this. They said a person was praying to God every day and said, oh, please let me win the lottery. Kept on praying. And a long time he kept on praying. No, he didn't win the lottery. And then finally, he just wept with tears in his eyes. Lord, I've been praying to you for so long. I still haven't won anything. And then he had a revelation. The Lord appeared before him and said, I want to help you, but first you need to buy a ticket. If you don't buy the ticket, then there is no chance of. So in order for us to succeed, we must make an effort. You have to do something. Because if I say, oh, what's the use of trying? I'm not going to be able to do it anyway. So if you don't try, you have completely eliminated the possibility of success. And therefore, in order to practice control, restraint over oneself, we need to try. We may not always succeed, but try we must. Because only when we can control the waste of energy and time from our lives, we'll be able to employ that saved time and energy in the right place. But if there is no control, then I'll have no reserves to spend it to where they need to be spent. So that is why self-control is an important quality for a devotee. Dridha nishchayaha, a firm conviction. What is the conviction we need? Now, In order to undertake any activity in life, we need conviction. Because if your work or any project needs your full focus, you need to have some, at least the minimum conviction that this is an undertaking worth investing time and energy on. Because without that conviction, I will not feel any urge to hold on to or to stick with anything that I have undertaken. So the minimum conviction we need in spiritual life, for instance, why is it that sometimes we might begin our spiritual practice with great enthusiasm, and then after a few days, a few months, a few years, it just dilutes, it just gets diluted. The original intensity kind of become less. And then some people may stop their practices altogether. Some people may just do it as a kind of one more chore to be completed. So why is it that the original enthusiasm and energy and hope, people are not able to sustain it over time? And that is because of a lack of conviction. Now, when we experience something, you don't need any conviction. For instance, when you wake up in the morning and you see the sun rise, you don't need, I need to be convinced it's a day. The day has begun. You don't need any conviction because you're actually seeing it. So when you're experiencing something, you don't need conviction. But you need conviction when you're not experiencing something directly. And that is what we need here in spiritual life. As we begin our spiritual practice, many of us may have had no experience of that higher ideal, may have had no experience of God. So we either need a deep faith that yes, God exists. I have not experienced God yet, but I know deep down that God exists. So either there could be this faith, a deep faith called Shraddha in Sanskrit, or a deep intellectual conviction. Either of them, or both, they are not exclusive. One can have faith and conviction, or at least conviction, or at least faith. These are the things, faith and conviction, which will help us stick to our practice until actual experience occurs. When the actual experience comes, then you really don't need that much faith because you are experiencing it directly. But until that point, we need this firm conviction, and that described here in the phrase Dridha Nishchaya. Mayyar Pita Mano Buddhihi, with his mind and intellect dedicated to me. By me is meant here the Spirit or God. So, if we have that conviction, if we have that faith, then both our mind and intellect will, by dedicated to me is meant will not have too much difficulty focusing them on the ideal. Sometimes when we try to meditate, and some days we might have difficulty concentrating our mind. Oftentimes the difficulty most people have in the beginning is, my mind gets so distracted. I'm not able to continually think of God. And the reason we are not able to think continuously of God is there are many other competing goals in our minds. And if my mind were completely convinced that this is the most important thing to me right now, it wouldn't get distracted. My mind is not fully convinced yet. I do not always believe that this is the most important thing. Because if it were, it's a little bit like this. Let's say if you are crossing a very narrow bridge and there isn't enough light, there's a river in fully flooded river below, 100 feet below, and it's a very narrow bridge. One wrong step and you might go tumbling down. and all you have is a moonlight. So you have to be very careful. Now at that moment, whether or not you think about it very logically, instinctively you know that the most important thing is that you are safe. The most important thing is that you step on this thing, you don't take a wrong step. Because if you're not fully focused on the next step you take, you might just die. At that time, you are not going to be distracted thinking, oh, what shall I have for dinner today? Or yesterday, it's not going to happen, I can guarantee you. Because at that moment, you know, this is the question of my life. Do we feel that when we try to meditate? And oftentimes we might find, when we try to meditate, the mind is distracted and we are not really able to meditate on God much. And we just wake up or get up after a few minutes, the mind not having focused at all. And we find, well, life is pretty okay. Not much damage has occurred by my not concentrating on God for these few minutes, as it might have occurred on that walking on the bridge. I could have lost my life. Now, because of that, we don't realize the importance of the mind getting diverted from the spiritual ideal. And that is why sometimes in spiritual texts, death is often spoken of. We, in the beginning when we pray also, we from death to immortality. The reason death is invoked so often in spiritual texts is a kind of a reminder that we have limited time and energy. We don't know how limited, which is actually makes it worse. If we at least knew how long we are going to live, there is some way to budget how we are going to be able to spend our time and energy. Since we don't know that, it's actually, it makes it more difficult. And that is why when I say sometimes that it's good to think about death in a very positive way, in a healthy way, and this is it, to be aware that one day I'm going to die. And then we realize that I have so many other things to do in life. I have only these 15 or 20 minutes I can give for prayer and meditation. And if those 15 or 20 minutes I really don't give my best, then I have really missed a big chance. Because I don't know. Maybe that may be the last time I may be meditating in my life. What if I die that day? And that's my only chance to be in connection with God. And if we are able to say, when we sit for meditation, it's not how many minutes we meditate, but the quality of that meditation. If we make a firm resolve that this next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however long you meditate every day, I'm going to make a very conscious effort to think only to just repeat the sound of my mantra, to visualize my Ishta in the heart. And I'm going to not pay any attention to anything else. If I make that firm resolve and try your best, again, as I said, you may not fully succeed, but every time you sit, you can make that firm resolve. The extent of how much you will succeed will depend on how much self-control you have, how much control over your mind you have, how much conviction you have, and how much of your mind and body you are able to give to that spiritual ideal. If all of these things come together, the quality of meditation will improve. And that is why Krishna says, such people who have these qualities are very dear to me. So let me read that translation again. Non-envious, friendly, compassionate towards all beings, free from the ideas of possession and ego consciousness, sympathetic in pain and pleasure, forgiving, always contented, contemplative, self-controlled, of firm conviction with his mind and intellect dedicated to me, such a devotee of mine is dear to me. Verse 15. Yasmanno dvijate loko lokanno dvijate chayaha Harshamarshbhayotvagair Mukto yassacha me priyaha. From whom the world gets no trouble, and who gets no trouble from the world, who is free from elation, jealousy, fear, and anxiety, he is dear to me. So the first characteristic, from whom the world gets no trouble. In other words, a true devotee will make conscious effort to see that he or she is not the cause of bringing pain and suffering to anyone in the world, either through speech, through thoughts, or actions. And the three are related. We might think, oh, it doesn't matter what I think of others. I can think terrible things about others, so long as if I just smile and say good things. Actually, no. Even hatred begins in the heart, and that manifests as hateful speech, and then could be further manifests as actions. So everything begins with thoughts, and therefore I should not hurt anyone even through my thinking. Sometimes when we speak about violence, we always or mostly understand violence in a very gross way. Only if I go and beat up somebody or kill somebody, then I am a violent person. But no. Violence occurs at various levels. It can occur at the level of speech. If some people, they say, have a very acidic tongue. So even if I speak in a way which hurt other people, I may not have even physically gone anywhere near them. But if I speak in a very hurtful way, then that is violence too. It can get even more subtle. Even a jealousy, being jealous of other people, is a form of violence. So even thinking in the mind, thoughts of hurting someone, even thinking about it, not actually doing it, not speaking about it, just thinking about it, that's violence. So when the scriptures say, ahimsa paramo dharmaha, non-violence is the highest virtue, it doesn't mean, oh, I'm not killed anyone, so I'm very ahimsa. Well, that's true, but we have to now go at the subtler level and see. I may not have actually gone and killed someone, but am I careful with my words to make sure that... Now, one thing, unconsciously, if we do something, we really are not responsible because, well, we were completely unconscious of it. But let's say we do something unconsciously, we see the result, and from the result we realize, oh, I should not have spoken that way. I should not have thought that way. I shouldn't have done it that way. We recognize our mistake, and in the future, I can say, I will be careful in the future. So anything that is done unconsciously, you are forgiven the first time because you were unconscious, you didn't know. But after knowing the results, I shouldn't then do it because then it becomes conscious. So consciously, so when it says from whom the world gets no trouble, in other words, such a person, a devotee, consciously will not hurt others through their words, through their thoughts, or through their actions. And who gets no trouble from the world. This is interesting. We really don't have much control over the world. We have, if we exercise it, we have control over our thoughts, provided our mind is under control. We have control over what we say, provided our speech is under control. We have control over what we do, provided our body and mind both are under our control. But how much control do we have about what other people think, what other people say, what other people do? We really have very limited control. And yet, who gets no trouble from the world doesn't mean that people in the world don't trouble a devotee. What it means is, people in the world can do what they want. The devotee does not get troubled. In other words, can I build a firewall around myself that people can think terrible things about me, those thoughts will not be able to penetrate that firewall. People can say terrible things about me. Of course, if I have ears, I might hear them, but it will not disturb the tranquility of my mind. Sometimes we get so disturbed. Look at the power of words. Someone can be at a distance. The person may not hurt you physically. But if someone were to say, you are an idiot, you are a fool, we are hurt. All that has happened, we have just heard a few words, just a sound. Now, a true devotee, if someone were to go and tell a devotee, you are an idiot, that devotee will not get troubled, even though the devotee may understand the meaning of the word idiot. Why? How would a devotee think? Well, one way is this. If someone tells me I'm an idiot, I must first ask and find out, well, is it true? and maybe it's true. And if I discover that, well, I am an idiot, then actually we must be grateful that this a revelation, something I didn't know, has been told to me. On the other hand, we might be able to look in our heart and find, I don't think I'm an idiot. So clearly, this person is saying something which I'm not. Now, if I'm not an idiot and somebody says I'm an idiot, that doesn't make me an idiot, right? This person can say what they want. Someone can say, you are the president of America. Well, that's great, but that doesn't make me a president. So what people say doesn't change who I am. So a devotee would say, well, I'm not an idiot. So this person is clearly either under delusion, or this person has a bad judgment, or this person has some problem. But again, it's that person's problem. If I'm hurt by it, if my own peace of mind is disturbed by it, I have made it my problem. So what is that person's problem? I have made it my problem. So that is what is meant by who gets no trouble from the world. What it means is the world can try its best to trouble this person. This person is strong enough not to get troubled. Again, we may not always succeed, but when we become perfect devotees, we will consciously not trouble the world, and we will be strong enough not to be troubled by the world. Who is free from elation, jealousy, fear, and anxiety. Harsha, elation. Now, harsha is not simply being happy. Of course, devotees can be happy. In fact, the more we become true devotees of God, the happier we will be. So, it doesn't mean that if I'm a devotee, I shouldn't be happy. But harsha is more than happiness. Harsha means not being able to control my happiness. And again, it goes back to that self-control. If I cannot control my happiness, if I have no control over my happiness, I will have no control over my pain either. So there are things in life that will make us happy, and there are things in life that will make us miserable. And it's perfectly okay to be both happy and sad. So we have not become robots or just machines. We not be happy or sad at all. So it's okay to be happy or sad. But in either case, I should have both my happiness and my sadness under my control. If either of them, I get overwhelmed by them, if either of them make me incapacitated for doing anything, then there is a problem. So one who is free from elation, free from jealousy. So when good things happen to me, I can be very happy. And if I can keep that happiness under control, that's fine. But what is my reaction when some good things happen to somebody else? Am I happy when good things happen to others? If I'm not happy when good things happen to others, then one other possibility is I may get jealous. Why it's happening to that person? Why is it not happening to me? And so that is a problem. So a true devotee is free from elation, free from jealousy, free from fear, and free from anxiety. One of the ways of understanding the difference between fear and anxiety is that fear has a definite object. Anxiety is kind of very hazy. So you can say, oh, I have an anxiety attack, or I'm feeling very anxious. And if I'm able to point out what I'm anxious about, then it's not really anxiety. Then I can say, I'm afraid of that. So let's say someone can say, I'm afraid of snakes. I have fear of snakes. And people have fear of snakes. Now, if I have fear of snakes, at least I know what to do. I know that keep away from snakes. But if I say, oh, I'm just feeling anxious today, there is no object. You don't know what to do. You're just feeling anxious. And therefore, sometimes they say jokingly, if you have an anxiety, first transform that anxiety into fear. In other words, find out what are you anxious about. And if you know what you are anxious about, you will at least have some idea about what to do about it. In either case, whether it's fear or anxiety, the presence of fear or anxiety in our lives is an indication of lack of faith in God. We never hear of a fear or anxiety in the heart of a little baby. When a baby is in a mother's lap, a baby is being just held by her mom, the baby has no anxiety. Baby has no fear. A devotee of God is like a little baby, and God is this divine father or mother. So if we are always in the arms of God, if we always know that we are being protected by God, why should there be fear? Why should there be anxiety? It's only when we feel lost in life that we feel fear and anxiety. And so, one great disciple of Ramakrishna, his name was Swami Ramakrishnananda, he once said, the presence of fear and anxiety in our heart is an indication that our faith in God hasn't become strong yet. And that is why Krishna says, an ideal devotee is one who is free from jealousy, fear, and anxiety. Such a devotee is dear to me. And let's read verse number 17. 16, sorry. Anapeksha shuchir daksha udasino gatavyataha sarvarambha parityagi yo mad bhaktas same priyaha. Independent, clean, dexterous, indifferent, untroubled, and discarding all endeavors, such a devotee of mine is dear to me. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 more qualities. Anapekshaha. Independent means free from expectations. Whatever we do in life, if we have some expectation from it, we have become dependent on it. In other words, we have lost our freedom. If I do things with expectation, there are possibilities are two. Either the expectation will be met or it will not be met. If it is met, it will going to make me happy. If it is not met, it's not going to make me happy. Either way, my independence is lost. And therefore, anapekshaha means free from expectations. There is one great verse which says, Ashahi paramam dukkham, nairashyam paramam sukham. Living with expectation is greatest misery. And living without expectation is the greatest joy. So, what it means is this: we must work hard, we must carry out all our duties and responsibilities, do everything as perfectly as you can, but don't expect anything from anyone. Don't think that if you don't expect, you won't get it. The law of life is this: what we deserve will come to us no matter what. Nobody can stop from getting what I truly deserve. It'll come, whether I expect it or not. And what I don't deserve will not come to me, no matter what I do. So what is in my hands is to work hard, do the best I can, and just live like a little baby, knowing I'm under God's protection. And if you can live without expectation, you can be truly happy. Again, this is one more exercise. Each of these qualities is really an occasion for self-examination. We can look in our own life and say, what kind of expectations I have in my life? What are the things I expect from the world? What are the things I expect from my friends? What are the things I expect from my family? What are the things I expect from myself? Think about it. If you sometimes find it difficult to just think about it in an abstract way, get a piece of paper and just write it. These are the things I expect. These are the things I expect from the world, from nature, from family, from friends, and from your job, and so on. Make a list. The longer your list is, it's a little bit of a problem. Because a lot of those things, because a lot of these expectations, we don't have much control over the outcome. That's the reason it's problematic. Now, after making that list, ask yourself, can I eliminate a few from these? Is it possible for me to strike out and say, well, okay, I think I will go to stop expecting this. I'm going to stop expecting. Now, stopping expectation doesn't mean that you won't do what you're supposed to do. So, this is a given. In my life, I'm going to be sincere, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to carry out all my duties and responsibilities. That is given. And then you look at that list and say, can I live without this expectation? Can I live? And you will see, the shorter your list becomes, the happier you will be. And a day will come when you will be able to strike out everything from that list. And you can say, I don't expect anything from anyone in this world. And when that happens, you will be the happiest person in this entire universe. I can guarantee you that. So make a list, see how big it is, and see how much you can trim it. Look at it now and then, maybe once a week or so, and see how much. And it's true. If you find at some point in life that list is, there's nothing on that list, you can throw away that paper, you will be a happy person. That is what Krishna is saying here. Shuchihi, cleanliness, includes external cleanliness, internal cleanliness. Daksha, dexterous. Daksha means being alert, active, not lazy. So, again, all of these things would require being aware of our purpose in life, aware of our duties, aware of our responsibilities. Udasinaha. Although it's translated indifferent here, what it really means is unbiased. We all have lots of biases and prejudices in our lives about everything, about the people around us, about the food that we eat, about the kind of clothes that we wear, pretty much. Well, it's basically this. We might have different opinions about a lot of things, but when these opinions kind of get very crystallized, like this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, holding on too tightly to these matters of opinion makes life very difficult for oneself and also for others. And that is why the great teaching that was given by Swami Tyagananda, another great disciple of Ramakrishna, was, in matters of opinion, swim with the current. In matters of principle, stand firm like a rock. So we all must have firm principles and values. No compromise there. We have to be very clear. But what we need to distinguish is a principle from opinion. And just as we can have our opinions, but recognize that every person have their opinion too. And our opinions may be very different. Which is why then, that's why elections occur. According to what does election mean? That when you go to vote, that in my opinion, this is the right person. And then not everyone is going to vote according to your choice. They have their own vote. That's why, depending on the number of people contesting an election, the votes are counted, and then you see whose opinion, the majority opinion then wins. Well, that's what democracy is all about, how majority rules and so on. So that is a great thing to recognize, how to identify what is a principle and how to identify which is an opinion. Gatavyataha, untroubled. Again, going back to what we saw before, if I remember that God is always there taking care of me, then I won't be troubled. Just like a little baby in a mother's arm is not troubled. Sarvarambha parityagi, discarding all endeavors. Now here, all endeavors doesn't mean I'm not going to do everything. What the commentators describe this phrase, Sarva Arambha Parityagi, it means that all actions undertaken with desire. So there are two kinds of work. They call Sakama Karma and Nishkama Karma. Kama means desire. So work that is done with desire will yield a result. And that result will bind me. And if the goal is freedom, I must be able to do the work but without desire. If I do the work without desire, it will yield a result, but I won't be caught by it. So even when you do something good, people are going to appreciate it. There is going to be praise, there is going to be recognition. But if you are expecting it, then you are in trouble. But if you're not expecting it, don't think that if you're not expecting it, people won't appreciate it. Of course they'll appreciate it. But if you're not expecting it, then you'll be happy if people appreciate it. But if they don't appreciate it, you won't be miserable. And even when they appreciate it, you are not going to be then, your ego is not going to be boosted. Oh, how wonderful a person I am because everyone is appreciating me. Then I am again trouble. Then I'm caught. I'm dependent on it. And so that is the discarding all endeavors means a devotee makes sure that all the work that is done out of love for God. If I do work as an offering to the divine being, as an offering, for instance, the devotees of Ramakrishna and Holy Mother can say, I do it out of love for Ramakrishna. I do it out of love for Holy Mother. Then my freedom is retained. I won't get troubled. My independence remains intact. A devotee who has been able to cultivate these qualities is dear to me. That is what Krishna says in verse 16. Any ideas, thoughts, comments on what we have seen today?
Swamiji, going back to the point you made about the expectations, there's a natural human tendency to gravitate towards situations and people and relationships that fulfill expectations. Mm-hmm. And that often guides our choices in terms of whether we choose X, Y, or Z, or person X in a certain context. What would you say with respect to that? Because if you were to have no expectations, then it would also not guide specific choices that you might make. So there's I guess, how do you resolve that sort of question?
I mean, I would see that, I would think that our choice should be primarily guided as devotees about whether this is right or it is good. If it is right or good, we should choose it. And again, whatever you deserve or this thing will come to you whether you expect it or not. But if I choose something simply based on expectations, then independent of whether it's right or wrong, what if I choose this because it will fulfill my expectation, but I really don't think it's really right. It is not going to take me in the right direction, or it's not a good choice, but it fulfills my expectation. Then if I'm a devotee, I will prioritize thing being either right or good over whether it simply fulfill my expectation. In other words, I think it's possible to combine it by saying, I will first examine my expectations. Are my expectations leading me towards something which is right or good, or my expectations are leading me something toward which are opposite of that? If my expectations are in the direction of what is right or good, I think then there is no conflict. It should be fine. And it's understandable. What you say is true. We will, of course, choose something that is favorable to us. That is given. Of course, why should we choose something which is terrible? Of course not. But it's not a question of terrible or favorable, I think. For a spiritual seeker, the choice should be whether it is right, whether it is good, I think. Yeah.
Maharaj, today's all the verses was like neti, detachment. So, in order to be a spiritual seeker, you should not do this or you should do this. So, when it comes to detachment, that means, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're detaching something from something, then you're attaching yourself to something else. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm getting attached. So how do you explain that, how we can be totally detached but not attached with anything?
For a devotee will be attached to God. And attachment to God is like what was that term? I keep on forgetting that term. Sometime after this, we have a surgeon here. So what are those sutures which dissolve by themselves? What are they called when you're after surgery? Yeah, sometimes, after surgery, sometimes you need to go to the doctor again and cut those things. And sometimes they just, by itself, it kind of goes. I don't know what the technical term is. So I think attachment to God is a little bit like that. Attachment to the spiritual ideal or God is an attachment, true. But that attachment detaches me from everything else. And when it detaches me from everything else, that attachment also melts away. And so it is a good attachment. Well, anything dealing with God is by definition very different from anything dealing with something else. So I think it is good to be attached to God, because if detachment is the goal, attachment to God detaches me from everything else. So it's good. Okay. Yeah.
So you began saying that we should remove from our lives those things that may not be necessary. You use the word necessary. But what about things that may not seem necessary but are good for us? I would think in my life, for example, arts, humanities, they're not necessary for a lot of my spiritual progress, my professional progress, my family, but they may be good for me. So how do I find space for things that may be good but not necessary?
Like
arts, music. Why would I don't need to listen to good music. It has no necessity to my life.
No necessity, then don't listen to it.
But it's good for me.
Well, then it's necessary for you. If you feel it's good for you, the idea that you feel it's good for me shows that it's necessary for you, because not listening to it, you feel you're going to miss something. If you feel then it is necessary. So when you began by saying it's not necessary, that's not true. Because when you say something is not necessary means, if it is not a part of your life, you won't miss it. But now, if you say, well, music is not necessary, but it's good for me, that means you're going to miss it. So it is necessary. Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. And again, music itself being necessary is not necessarily something that is going to take you away from God. Again, with everything, even music, what kind of music am I listening? I mean, a lot of inspiration, a lot of the spiritual music, in fact, can take me to God. So it's possible to have all these apparently varied interests, and not necessarily it means that it's going to take me away from God. I can go closer to God through music, through art, through science, through pretty much even through, if I can clean the courtyard well, even that can take me to God, if that is done with the proper, in the spirit of Karma Yoga. So that is to be kept in mind also. Yeah.
I think starting of the lecture you said, being spiritual is we have to questioning until we are satisfied. At the same time, at the end of that stanza, you said we have to have a conviction. So conviction is somewhere we are not satisfied yet about the answer.
Right.
So aren't they contradictory, like questioning or conviction?
No, they are not contradictory. The thing is this, we don't usually have just one question. Most of us have many questions. Now, some of the questions will be answered, some of the questions will not be immediately answered. So those questions which are answered, we will find some conviction growing in the heart. Some of the questions will not be answered. And what a spiritual seeker, what a devotee needs is the ability to live through life with a few unanswered questions, with a few unresolved doubts. Because if all the questions are answered, all the doubts are removed, you're already an enlightened being. Then your problem is solved. The fact that we are not become enlightened yet means that, well, some questions are not answered. And that's why the conviction is never going to be like a perfect conviction, but enough of a conviction that some of your questions are answered. Enough of and then other thing, faith will come not necessarily through intellectual conviction, it's kind of a gut feeling. Faith is something that cannot be artificially generated. Faith can be strengthened, but faith cannot be created artificially. So, conviction can grow through those questions which are answered in your life. And there are always going to be a few unanswered questions. Now why I say to keep those unanswered questions in some corner of your heart is, if we are alert, as this verse points out, the word that is used here in this is daksha. If you are always alert, you will find that life itself, our daily interactions, themselves will answer many of our questions if we are looking for them. It's a little bit like this. Sometime you might have noticed that you are, say, as it so often happens, say your remote is lost, your TV remote, let's say, and you've been looking all over, where is it gone? It's a pretty common experience people have. And then you look and look and look, and then you just don't find it anywhere. And you're frustrated, and then you say, just go to sleep. Because you're upset, you didn't see it, and you're gone to sleep. Next morning you wake up, you fix yourself a cup of coffee, and then you're getting ready for work, and then you find the remote is there on your kitchen top, but you haven't seen it. Because, well, you are fixing your coffee and you're getting ready to go to work. You were not looking for it. It was there right in front of you, maybe just next to your coffee maker. But you were not looking for it, you didn't notice it. Exactly in the same way. Now this person who really had an unanswered question, where is my remote? But that question somehow, temporarily at least, maybe this person again after coming back from work may again start searching for the remote. But temporarily, that question had vanished in the morning. Because that question had vanished, even though the answer was right in front, I didn't notice it. So similarly, we have a lot of unanswered questions in our heart. But they don't seem to get answered because we are not looking for the answers. And being daksha, being dexterous, being alert means to be aware of those unanswered questions, to, as we go through our day-to-day life, apparently doing mundane things. It's not that always you have to be studying some big scripture and only all these answers will come from the Gita. It doesn't have to be that way. Maybe you're just having a discussion with your friend over a cup of coffee. It may not be even a very highly spiritual subject. Or maybe you're just reading the newspaper or just anything. But if you're always aware about the words, the sounds, the message that comes to us from various different ways, suddenly you will find, oh, that's what I was trying to figure out. This was something I've been thinking for the last 6 months, and then suddenly now the answer has come. So that's what can happen. So a lot of us have a lot of unanswered questions. Don't expect all the answers at once. But keep those unanswered questions, be always alert, and life itself will answer a lot of questions. In fact, you will not need to read too many books to find answers. A lot of our daily life itself, if we are alert, we'll find answers coming from it. So keep alert. That's the key word, being alert.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will stop today here. And then if you have any more questions, etc., we will continue the discussion when we meet next Wednesday. So we will begin next Wednesday on verse number 18. 17. So this chapter has only 4 more verses, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then this chapter comes to an end. So next Wednesday, very likely we will be able to complete chapter 12. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhuhum. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. Our Sunday satsang, the topic will be the reality non-show. On Tuesday and Saturday, our Aarti and meditation will also continue as usual, and next Wednesday we will conclude with chapter 12. So let's have the prayer on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.